Yes, we are the Arseless Chaps here at Triple R. Tony Martin is my name. Damian Cowell is with me.
Good afternoon.
And, of course, Kent pushing the buttons.
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Don't look so nervous, Kent. There are not as many clips as there was last week. It's the final episode. The usual people, I don't think, are back next week, because I think Anne Edmonds is kicking goals in England right now, so someone else will be drafted in. Someone with more of an arse will be here next week. But, Damian, this is, because it's our final show, I don't know if you've noticed this, but for the last 3 weeks I've avoided pestering you with questions about your earlier bands. Have you been aware of that?
I have noticed that, Tony, but I think, today is a very emotional show, for all of our listeners.
Absolutely.
And, I think it's to be excused if you break down and, sort of lose your principles at some point.
Okay, well, I'm hoping that'll happen sometime over the next 55 minutes. But what I wanted to ask you about is album covers. We haven't talked about album covers. Am I remembering wrongly, or in the 80s, did you bring out a record that was a record? When I say record, I mean an old style cardboard,
vinyl, yes.
The cardboard LP cover that was sealed on all sides. Was that you?
Yeah, that's right, Tony. We were wide-eyed and principled when we started in TISM, and we thought that everything we do should make some kind of statement, and generally a statement to piss people off. So we put a 7-inch single in a 12-inch sleeve, so it sort of bounced around inside it, and sealed all 4 sides, and then printed it so that you couldn't tell which side. In fact, it said this side up on all 4 corners of the sleeve. So
effectively, it was impossible to listen to the record without destroying it.
That's
really
correct. Yeah, and it was our own sort of McLuhan-esque commentary on the medium as the message, and just a lot of wank from a bunch of masturbating schoolboys.
Okay.
Really.
And so if anyone still had an unopened, that would be quite the collector's item, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I've heard that you can spend a fair bit of money on eBay on some of these things, and
I think I've mentioned before that my stepdad had 2 copies of Hot August Night on vinyl. There was the one for playing, and then there was the one on the shelf that no one was allowed to touch.
That's fair enough. It's just a shame that people touched their copies at home.
Oh, they touched them.
And the radios
in
touched them.
In the 1970s. Yes. The only choice in our house was Hot August Night or something from the James Last collection. That's right. Old people will know what I'm talking about. Now, what about controversies? Did you ever you must have had a lot. Didn't you have an album recalled? Should we not mention that?
No, well, unless...
and I don't think we can say one of the words that was on the cover, by the way.
Well, hopefully Ken Doan's lawyers don't listen to this program, which I think we're fairly safe because no one listens to this program. So, yes, that was the big controversy. We what's the word? We appropriated a Doan image for the cover of our. It wasn't vinyl by those days, of course, but and just as it came out, they got in touch with us, and we had to. Not only did we have to withdraw it, we actually tried a second version, which looked like someone had scribbled over it was the koala, the Doan koala, and had a syringe sticking out of it. Right. And Doan didn't do the syringe. No. And we tried a second version, which looked like it had scribble over it, so you couldn't see the koala. But we actually had that all sort of ready to go, and the lawyers went no because the logo from the first one was still there, the TISM logo, done in a Doan style.
Right.
So ended up completely rooting that whole album because by the time we came up with the third cover, we'd actually finished touring it. And yeah. So how about you? Did you get into any hot water over album sleeves?
I remember we tried to, because we had myself and Mick Malloy did the Brown album that was just a brown cover, so there was no trouble there. Then there was Poop Shoot, which the idea was to take an offensive phrase but render it beautifully.
Yes.
So that was the idea. And for the third one, I remember Pink Floyd had a CD out which had if you saw it in the shop, if you can imagine such a thing, a shop selling CDs, there was a little LED light in the spine, which
that's right. That was Pulse, wasn't it?
Pulse. It was like a live album, maybe?
Yeah. Yes.
But and so it just went, on and off in the shop, so you could see it from the other side of the shop. And we were at one stage going to do an album, I can't remember why, called Blow It Out Your Arse. And we said, can we get a LED light in the spine which actually pulses the phrase "blow it out your ass" in Morse code?
Wow,
so
that would have been one for the fans, wouldn't it?
It would offend sailors who wandered into brashes in the mid-90s. But it was going to cost so much money to have an irregular pulse as opposed to a regular pulse. So that idea was pulped. Then I remember we had a segment on our radio show called Please Explain, because that was something that Pauline Hanson had said.
Oh, yes.
And so I think the album was... the record company wanted us to call the album Please Explain because it was so popular, the segment. So I think the cover was going to be a picture of the moon with an abandoned shopping trolley on the moon with the Earth visible in the background. And then someone else used that. Someone else thought of that same joke and it was used for something else. So we couldn't do that. And then... Princess Diana was killed, of course, and I don't know if people would remember this, but in when that happened, there was a lot of talk of a car in the tunnel that was. Can you remember there was conspiracy theory, and everyone went they'd seen a white Fiat Uno. And you kept hearing that phrase, white Fiat Uno. So we were going to call the album White Fiat Uno. And it had I won't even describe it, but a pretty offensive image to go along with that. And Mushroom just shat themselves, said, we can't do that. So then we were so angry, went, all right then, well, why don't we call it, and the album was going to be called something along the lines of A Beautiful Tribute to Diana, the Princess of Wales. And the cover would be a Sgt. Pepper's-like array of all of the terrible souvenir items which came out on sale as soon as she died. Remember, there were just hundreds of calendars and biscuits, but everyone was cashing in. So then the record company didn't like that, and I remember someone at the record company saying, was so furious because we couldn't come up with a cover, they just went, why don't you have something that's just a positive message for the young people? And I remember Mick Malloy going, what, just like eat your peas? And they've gone, well, no, and then he's gone, fine, it's called Eat Your Peas. So that album was called Eat Your Peas as a result.
I bet the Beatles have a similar story about the name for Sgt. Pepper, yeah.
Sure
I sort of got into this rut where I kept suggesting really stupid ideas and, after a while it became, oh, God, Damian's got another one. Like I used to sort of say, when we were on Polygram, I used to say, can we have our own label called Polygram with 2 L's?
Right,
and,
right.
Can we call our album Kylie Minogue? And can we call ourselves Crowded Horse? And
no,
stuff
was
like
the
that.
answer.
Yes, pretty much so, yeah.
You did have the White Album, though, didn't you?
We did, yes. And the best part about that were the T-shirts that we had printed, which had...
white T-shirt?
Yeah, they were white, but they had TISM on them. But I wanted... Because, it was Albin with an N, and so, it was a documentary with an N and all that. So I wanted TISM to look like it was Tizen with an N.
Right.
So the design had TISM printed so that it sort of fell off the edge of the T-shirt.
Gotcha,
and it looked like Tizen, but the T-shirt company corrected it.
Really?
So there you go. There's
done.
How the artist struggles in the commercial sector.
All this leads us up to the present day, where, of course, I noticed that you now do all of your own album cover art. That's something
yes, that's right.
To do.
I'd like to be seen one day as an auteur. Perhaps, when they decide to do a musical about me. Did you know that Nick Barker, who I feel terrible sympathy for because we used to pick on him so often, why did you call your band TISM? Because Nick Barker and the Reptiles was already taken.
Right.
He's doing Bon Scott, the musical.
Is he?
And it got me to wondering, this obviously is what you do when you get to a certain stage in your career. Yeah. You start doing, obviously Tex Perkins did Johnny Cash.
Oh, that's right.
And, I was sort of thinking that maybe Nick Cave could do Dennis Walter.
Sure.
He'd be really great. And who would I do? I reckon the only person I'd be able to sort of do would be Ricky Nixon. And I only said that because I wanted us to mention Ricky Nixon 4 weeks in a row. But you were asked, were you not,
I was.
to do one of these.
I am going to finally tell that story on today's show, but let's have some music. Let's have something from your latest album. We mentioned a few weeks back that one of your many collaborators on Damian Cowell's Disco Machine, fine album available at all of the usual places, features a collaboration with Tim Rogers.
That's right.
Let's hear that now. This is called I'm Addicted to Moderation.
Coming up at the corner, Sherry Curry of the Runaways, Ash, Violent Femmes, Albert Hammond Jr., Dallas Crane, Tina Arena, Narco and Medicine for the People, and The Beards. Plus, Buzzcocks, Senses Fail, Sasquatch, Maxi Priest, Dear of the Ambassador, The Stranglers, Holy Holy, and City Calm Down. Also on the calendar, Bob Marley Birthday Bash, Built to Spill, Alan Stone, JD McPherson, Vintage Trouble, and Iota. Plus heaps more at cornerhotel.com. Triple R sponsors.
the end, beautiful friend. This is the end.
I just saw Peter and Maureen working a second job at McDonald's. What's going on?
They bought a Jeep.
Jeep. Less adventure, more debt. Hi, I'm Pope Francis, aka Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Because I'm 178 years old, I no longer have sexual feelings, which is a bit of a shame because you should see how many groupies I get. Nearly as many as the Arseless Chaps.
That is us, the Arseless Chaps. Thank you, Pope Francis. Damian, why did we play very... we
Yes.
just heard before that, we heard, of course, Damian Cowell's Disco Machine with I'm Addicted to Moderation. But
Yes.
what was that abridged version of the end?
Yes, that's right. Went down from 11 minutes to 1 minute.
Is this because of what I was talking about on Breakfast Radio?
Yeah, that's right. I think we were talking about this a couple of shows ago, and I thought I'd ask you to pick up on that. And in the meantime, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do a few little abridged versions? But
the reason that happens is because there was a rumour, which I can confirm was true, back in the 80s and 90s on commercial radio, on breakfast shows, in order to squeeze more ads into the hour, the radio stations would often sneakily cut out an entire verse and chorus from a song so that you'd have a 4-minute song and it suddenly would only go 2.5 minutes. And no one was allowed to talk about it.
Right.
Everyone had to deny that it was going on, even though anyone with a tape recorder could prove that it was going on. And I remember we picked up on that with our show because we went, right, okay, let's have a bit of that action. And we managed to create a 52-second version of Bryan Adams' Summer of '69, which was very popular, I will say.
a community service you were doing there.
That's right. So we're going to have some more of those over the course of the hour.
Yes. Well, I was so inspired by it that, that version you just heard of The End by Jim Dawes. Jim Dawes. He's indoors. Cuts out all that sort of Oedipal nonsense that he goes on with. And I reckon, I would have liked the Doors a lot more if that had been the version.
If they'd just cut to the chase.
All that Lizard King crap, Well... Just have, but anyway, we'll hear a couple more with any luck later on.
We certainly will. But in the meantime, do we have a prize? Yes, if you've been following me on Twitter at Mr. Tony Martin, you will know we do have a prize because a young Beck Chapman, who is, of course, one of the members of Damian Cowell's Disco Machine, has been fossicking about in the second-hand shops. What has she produced for us, Damian?
Well, look, one of the many gifts that Beck Chapman has brought to me over the time I've known her is this sensational vinyl album by Tony Barber, called Songs of the Century.
Songs of the Century, of course that's what it's called. I was, Lawrence Mooney was chiming in on the Twit Pipe today as well, and I sent him a copy of just the cover art of Tony Barber's autobiography. You guys aware of what that's called?
No.
What would it be called?
No.
Think about it.
Sale of the Century?
No, it's called Who Am I? But, of course, if you don't know that is Tony Barber's catchphrase,
yes.
The cover is like a moody black and white shot of Tony Barber wearing a black skivvy, and then it just says, Who am I? Like, you think it's some kind of existential volume. But, okay, so we do have an old-style gramophone hooked up in the studio today, and we are going to play a track off Tony Barber's Songs of the Century without having listened to it ourselves. So hopefully there won't be any foul language.
Yes, and you do run the gauntlet with Tony Barber, don't you? But look, listeners, it's a white-knuckle ride. We're going to... We're going to see how we can sort of redefine modern music as we know it.
And what track have you selected from Tony Barber's Songs of the Century?
Well, I've chosen the one which is most clearly autobiographical.
Hang on just a sec. I'll give you some of the options. You've got As Time Goes By, Love Me Tender, you've got My Blue Heaven, all classic standards from the American Songbook, but you've decided to go with
Naughty Lady of Shady Lane.
on Triple R.
The naughty lady of Shady Lane has the town in a whirl. The naughty lady of Shady Lane, me oh my oh what a girl. The naughty lady of Shady Lane has hit the town like a bomb. The back fence gossip ain't been this good since Mabel ran off with Tom. Our town was peaceful and quiet before she came on the scene. The lady has started a riot, disturbing the suburban routine. The naughty lady of Shady Lane has the town in a whirl. The naughty lady of Shady Lane, me oh my oh what a girl. You should see how she carries on with her admirers galore. She must be giving them quite a thrill, the way they flock to her door. She throws those come-hither glances at every Tom, Dick and Joe. When offered some liquid refreshment, the lady never says no. The naughty lady of Shady Lane has the town in a whirl. The naughty lady of Shady Lane, me oh my oh what a girl. The things they're trying to pin on her won't hold much water, I'm sure. Beneath the powder and fancy lace, there beats a heart sweet and pure. She just needs someone to change her, but she'll be nice as can be. If you're in the neighborhood, stranger, you're welcome to drop in and see the naughty lady of Shady Lane, so delightful to hold. The naughty lady of Shady Lane, she's delectable, quite respectable, and she's only 9 days old.
Yes, it's alternative music here on Triple R. That is Tony Barber with the Naughty Lady of Shady Lane from the album Songs of the Century, which was sent to us by the delightful Beck Chapman from the Disco Machine. And yeah, there was nothing offensive in there, was there?
No, it was a pretty rocking little track, although it may have objectified women, which I'm a bit worried about.
No,
but,
we're not
anyway.
standing for that.
No.
And of course, the subject of Tony Barber leads me on to my very good friend Pete Smith, who was, of course, the man who said the words "Sale of the Century" for 150 years on the Nine Network. And as I may have mentioned before, Pete is a friend of mine, and because my family are in New Zealand, every year I spend Christmas Day with the Smith family, not the Smith family, but not in a bin.
That's a very sad reality for many Australians. Yeah.
Just having an eggnog in a clothing bin in the Cowell supermarket car park. No, with Pete Smith and family, and I'm down the end on the orphans table, and also on that table is Mr. Phil Brady. And every year, Phil Brady will just say something mad to me. So this is the story you were alluding to. About 3 or 4 years ago, I'm at Christmas Day, and Phil just comes up to me and goes, "Tony, have you heard about the great success that John Michaels had with the Dusty Springfield musical? Have you thought of doing one of those yourself?" And I'm going, "What, write one or be in it? What do you mean?" He goes, "I reckon the Big O. Do you know the Big O? Roy Orbison, I reckon you're the man for the job. I think you've got to write and produce a musical." about Roy Orbison. What a strange thing to have someone pitch to you on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So I've gone, okay, maybe, Phil's had a couple of eggnogs. Maybe this is a joke. I'll just ignore it and on we go. So next year, I rock up to the Smiths for Christmas Day and Phil Brady comes up to me and goes, Tony, I've got the research materials for you. And he hands over this cachet of books, of magazine articles, of albums about Roy Orbison. It was just bizarre. So I guess I am now...
So how's it going, Tony?
Well,
is it coming along?
Here's the thing. I am a fan of Roy Orbison, but there's two things about Roy Orbison. A, where are you going to find someone who can do the voice, who can sing like Roy Orbison? No man has ever sounded like Roy Orbison. Okay, let's say you found that person. What are the chances they're going to look even anything like Roy Orbison, who, face it, was the most unusual looking pop star of all? He looked like Ina Sharples from Coronation Street, honestly. I guess it could work.
Yeah.
Does that Seekers one?
Yeah, that's right. Look, I don't think you should let those little hurdles get in the way, Tony. If you want some help, I'm around.
I think the only person it would be harder to cast in a stage musical than Roy Orbison would be our old favourite, Mark E. Smith.
Ah, yes.
Now, every week we seem to have crowbarred some Mark E. Smith talk into the show, so I've gone down, I've drilled down deep into the internet, and I didn't realise, Damian, I'm sure you did, that Mark E. had teamed up with Mouse on Mars, the German dance music duo.
That's right.
And I think they've only done one album under the name Von Sudenfed, which you just know was Mark E. Smith rambling about Sudafed, and somehow that became the name of the band. The album is Traumatic Reflections. Have you heard any of this?
No, I must admit I was tempted, but then I thought, it's probably dance music with a drunken ranting over the top.
It does sound like someone's laid down a bunch of dance music beats and then they've just secretly recorded Mark E. Smith ranting away. And of course, being a Mark E. Smith album, there is one track that's just completely mystifying. It's just someone mowing the lawn for 3 minutes.
Oh, really?
Which you've done on one of your albums, I will say.
Maybe I should do Mark E. Smith the musical. I think, I could do that.
If you can imagine that for 3 minutes with just the sound of a lawnmower under it, that is track 11 on this album. We're not going to play that one. No, we're going to play one of the more tuneful numbers. It's actually a great album, I think, Traumatic Reflections. Here is Mark E. Smith on lead vocals with, what is this track called? It's, oh my God, I can't read my own writing. It's The Rhino Skin. That's that's von Sudenfeld, that's Marky Smith, and a couple of Germans from the album Traumatic Reflections with the Rhino Skin. You're listening to the Arseless Chaps, Tony Martin, Damian Cowell, Kent on the buttons. Damian, what do you make of this photo on the back of that album? I don't think we need to see Marky Smith in drag.
No. I just if you keep that image in your mind of the guy on the disability pension at your local pub, imagine him now with lippy and a wig.
That is the most disturbing shot of a man in drag since Kevin Rowlands from...
yes.
Remember Dexy's Midnight Runners? He went through a phase of slipping into the drag.
Controversial figure he was,
yeah.
yes.
Here's my impression of him. Here we go. That was it. Now, we don't want to end the Marky Smith talk just yet because I believe, Damian, you've uncovered another collaboration.
Oh, look, he gets around, Marky, and I think what's really important is that, he adds something to every band that he works with. And, they were playing this track, actually, just down in the city where we were earlier on today. There's a beautiful big water slide, fun for all the family, and they're playing, sort of party music there. And this particular track, I think you'll recognise who Marky Smith is collaborating with on this track. It's a killer. Take it away, Kent.
Racing 1. Brentford 3, Oldham Athletic 3. Bristol City 2, Chesterfield Town 4. Colchester United 3, Blackpool 2. Doncaster Rovers 4, Bournemouth 2. Gillingham Town 1, Hartlepool United 0. Huddersfield Town 0, Bathurst City 0. Milton Keynes 2, Walsall 1. Nottingham Forest 2, Southend United 0.
Mark, thank you very much.
Yeah, very good.
Excellent performance.
Why have you got a number 1 haircut?
Tony Abbott. The Arseless Chaps. Triple R.
Yes, indeed. That is the show.
I'm Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, hang on. Everyone's here. They can't keep. It's an open door policy in the studio. It is Arseless Chaps, and if you just tuned in, what you were hearing was a very rare collaboration between AC/DC and Marquis Smith. Where on earth did you find that, Damian?
Well, look, just say, Tony, it's my music industry connections,
Okay.
and I can't really divulge my sources, but
All
certainly,
Ricky Nixon. No, sorry, I shouldn't have dropped that name.
poor old Malcolm Young is in a nursing home.
right.
I reckon Marquis Smith probably is talking like he should be in one. But anyway, let's not be too harsh.
You know who's looking a bit Marquis Smith is the drummer from AC/DC.
Phil Rudd.
Who was having a fair bit of trouble with the ladies in Tauranga in New Zealand. Now, we used to go to Tauranga for summer when I was a kid. I wouldn't have thought it was big enough to, supply that many ladies of the night for Phil's delectation. But what I love is, were you following that story in the papers when it was going on?
A little bit, yes.
What was great, the best thing about it was every article had to mention his current solo album, which was called Head Job. So there was just people going, the release of Mr. Rudd's Head Job album may be delayed. And then you get people going, I don't know what's going to happen with Head Job. Is it ever going to see the light of day? But enough about that. Let's talk briefly, if we can, TV and movies. Have anything you guys were... Kent, you're having a coughing fit. You're not well, I can tell. What have you been doing?
Oh, TV-wise?
What have you seen? Come on.
Making a Murderer.
Oh, now I've been hearing about this. Have you heard about this?
Binge.
No.
This is a real show. This is a documentary series.
Yep. It's kind of, in a way, 2 parts. The first couple of episodes are a tale of his conviction.
Oh, yeah.
Goes to jail.
Actual bloke.
18 years later, released, cleared.
Right.
And then gets charged and convicted again.
Now, this is the big craze at the moment. There was Serial on the podcasts. There was The Jinx.
The Jinx.
Of course, now Making the Murderer. When are we going to have our own, surely?
Any minute now?
There's going to be. I'm just trying to think of anything we can say that won't cause legal problems. But that's certainly the genre du jour at the moment, isn't it? I'm so far behind. I only started watching the last series of Game of Thrones a couple of days ago. And something that always makes me laugh is in the first episode, is you'll see this on TV a lot, a character will be killed off. I won't say, I don't want to give any spoilers, but let's just say someone's killed off at the end of Series 4, but then the actor has had to come back for one day on Series 5 just to play themselves in a coffin. That's the great thing about that is, and I've done a little bit of TV directing, when someone is dead in a scene, there is no arguments with the actors. There is no argument about what you should be doing or what your motivation is. It's basically stay still. But any televisual entertainment that's caught your eye? Damian, that you want to
I've
mention?
been enjoying Tony Barber's L'Étranger by Albert Camus.
That's one of my favourites.
I Slam My Cock in a Car Door, Series 4. I'm watching that at the moment.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is just, one of the more hard-hitting documentaries.
You never want to maximise the screen on the computer,
right,
I find, when you're watching that. Movies, I have to say, I've gone back into the files. We had something from Superbad last week, and I thought, let's go right back to the 70s and have something from Superfly.
Oh,
Let's have the theme from Curtis Mayfield. This is something unusual that they would do, where an album would come out and then they'd do the single and they'd remix the single. I think it was for jukeboxes, wasn't it, where they'd crank up the bass, give it a bit more grunt?
I'd actually never heard of that, Tony, but it does make sense, I guess, back in the good old days when that was perhaps the place where most people would have been hearing. But by the time, we were hit the scene, all they ever did was they'd do it was always fun when you were with a proper record company who did proper stuff. When we were briefly with Polygram, that was with 1L, they did a version. They would do versions without the vocals, so that you do a remix without the lead vocal, so that you could go on Hey, it's Saturday.
Right.
So that, and also the other thing which I discovered to my joy was the interview disc, which is obviously how they used to do interviews that were syndicated.
Well, this is my whole career started with misusing interview discs on New Zealand radio.
Well, I never knew. Of course, I was one of those wide-eyed listeners to radio who thought that, out in shit-can Tennessee, they actually got Paul McCartney to talk. But, in fact, it was so I still have a copy at home, which is this disc with 7 answers to imaginary questions.
It's great, because in New Zealand they would use them all the time. You'd be in, Matter, and the local DJ would go, well, David Bowie has just dropped in at 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning. Are you enjoying being here in Matter? And then the first answer on the record would just be David Bowie going, yes, I am. And then they go on to the second question. But anyway, we've got a single remix of the title track from Superfly, Crank It Up in Your Car, Curtis Mayfield.
There's a set going strong, a lot of things going If you want a career in the music and entertainment industry, find out how at the Australian Institute of Music Information Day. Courses include entertainment management, contemporary performance, audio engineering, composition and music production. To find a course that's right for you, visit the Australian Institute of Music Information Day, Wednesday, January 13 at their Melbourne City campus. To register, go to aim.edu.au. AIM, Triple R sponsors.
Hi, I'm Samuel L. Jackson. I used to be the baddest motherfucker on the planet, saying lines like, "That was a tasty burger," whilst killing people on Quentin Tarantino movies. Now, I make ads for Bet365. Don't make a mockery of your life. Listen to the Arseless Chaps on 3RRR.
It is the final round of Arseless Chaps, and just before those promos, we heard a track from Superfly, the soundtrack, Curtis Mayfield. Ken, just getting you on the spot, I know, but can you just go back to track 7 on that album? Mm-hmm. Just have a listen to this. I'm not sure, is the word tautology? Just have a listen to the opening of this track. Go. It's a bit of a talking bit. Here we go.
I've met many people over the years, and in my opinion, I have found that people...
In my opinion, I have found that... Really? It's either in your opinion or that you have found. It's not in your opinion you have found. Sorry, stand in the corner, Mr. Mayfield. Now, what are we doing? Earlier in the show, we were talking about the, frankly, criminal practice of radio stations presenting shortened versions of songs so they can squeeze more ads in. I'm told it no longer goes on. Damian, have you been...
Not if I had anything to do with it, Tony.
What have you got for us now?
Well, I used to work with you at Oz Stereo for a period of time, and... I made a vow to myself that I would never, ever hear Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin in its entirety for the rest of my life. And they used to play it, obviously, twice a day.
Sure they did. Yeah.
So, people often used to ask me, why are you in the toilet cubicle with your fingers poking in and out of your ears, Damian, a couple of times a day? And it was because I had to keep strong to my vow. So I've, to facilitate this... I have remixed Stairway to Heaven in a much more palatable version,
Let's hear
which
that.
Kent's going to play for us now.
Here it is.
There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway to heaven.
And there you go. That is
there we are.
Presumably the first and last time that song will ever be played on Triple R in the what is now I'm calling the definitive version.
Yes, I think that there'll be no topping that version.
Now, we were talking about music last week, Damian, that the ways to shock your parents with new genres of music.
That's right.
Because it's getting harder and harder for the young folk to play something in the bedroom that the parents haven't heard before, to shock them the way that punk rock did.
I know, that's
in the
right.
late 70s. So you've been investigating genres. What have you got for us this week?
Well, the great thing about modern music is that there are 40 trillion genres, and I hit upon a genre which is called sludge metal.
Right.
And, you're sort of scratching your head and going, sludge metal. I really have no idea what the music's going to sound like when I see that phrase, do I? Right. Sludge metal.
Have you furnished us with an example?
Yeah, well, look, believe it or not, Tony, and I know that most of what I say on this program is bullshit, but this, in fact, was one of the highest-rated albums of 2015 on the highly esteemed Pitchfork website. And this is a band whose sludge metal music, this album, the band, is called Bell Witch, and this track...
Bell Witch.
This track goes for 22 minutes.
We won't be playing all of it.
So we'll just give you a listen to a brief bit of, I don't know, it's got some great long biblical title, which, I can't remember. But
Stonehenge.
Cop a little bit here of sludge metal, Bell Witch.
Obviously, we're not giving that track by Bell Witch a fair shake because it does go for another 19 minutes. And that is, you would say that would be a standard example of sludge metal?
Well, apparently, and it's pretty relaxing ride for the other band members. Although I reckon the drummer is a bit like the timpani player in the orchestra, who you just would not want to nod off, otherwise you'd miss your cue. But yes, that goes for 22 minutes, and of course I like playing music on the wrong speed. So I thought, how will this sound if I whip it up to from 33 to 45? And it still was really, really, really slow. I had to speed it up 3 times, 300%, before it started to resemble the sort of thing that you might call a song.
Right.
And then what I discovered was that it was really just a sort of a fairly mediocre plodding heavy metal song.
Right.
They've just played it at this incredibly slow rate. And so that kind of got me to thinking, well, I reckon a sludge remix might be in order for a few other reasonably plodding, mediocre heavy rock acts. Right. Back in the 70s, if you were a mediocre heavy rock act, the only way to sort of get attention, you didn't sort of have a genre called sludge. So what you did was have an incredible light show and spit a bit of blood. And so we had Kiss, right? So I reckon what better band for a sludge remix? If Kiss had only had this arsenal of effects at their disposal back in the 70s, they could have done what I've managed to do with their famous track Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. Listeners, this track goes for 11 minutes, but don't go out and get a cup of tea because we are going to have to fade
Hang
it.
on, Dan Warner's popping down to the car park. No,
Yes,
come back.
That's right. And it is incredibly challenging for you. You will find it incredibly challenging, but I just want to do it because it's my last show on Triple R and I'll never get asked back here again. So here it is, Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day by Kiss, the Sludge Remix.
That is the Sludge remix of Kiss.
That's a doozy, isn't it?
It's really time for... What a show it's been today. Tony Barber and Sludge in the 1 hour here on Triple R. It has been fun filling in for the Down Low for the last 4 weeks. Thanks for having us. I don't think the Down Low is back next week. Someone else will be here. Maybe it'll just be Kent sitting there.
Alone, miserable.
And thanks for pushing buttons for us, Kim, for the last few weeks. Damian, is there anything you would like to plug before we sign off? Obviously, the Disco Machine album is available on iTunes and other sources.
Well, I'm just going into hiding pretty much like Prince. I'll be having private parties for celebrities, so not a lot of action, but,
Beautiful.
If anyone wants me to do a Sludge remix, I come quite cheap.
He does. Thanks for listening. It's been so much fun doing this, and obviously plenty more good shows on the R's. Dan Warner. That's Dan Warner. Dan Warner and Jed are next, and we'll see you. Well, I don't know if we will see you again. See what happens. Thanks for joining us here on the
Yes, you've been listening to the Arseless Chaps. See you next time.